Welcome to Bonnie's Beat. I'm your host, Bonnie Squires. We're coming to you from the studios of Radnor Studio 21 in beautiful downtown Wayne, Pennsylvania. We like to showcase people who are doing interesting, important things in the community. No, I don't have anybody from the Villanova basketball team, but he might have played basketball because our guest today is Mark Steinman. He is Vice President of Investments at Raymond James in Conshohocken. But he's here in his capacity as a signer honor to Vision 2020, the Shared Leadership Campaign. And we'll tell you all about it. Hello, Mark Steinman.
Thank you for having me, Bonnie.
Thanks for being had. How did you get involved? Because you hadn't even heard of Vision 2020, which has been around since 2010 is when Lynn Yackel founded it. We'll let people know that in the year 2020, we'll be celebrating the centennial of women's right to vote in America, right?
A lot of hundreds today we're going to talk about, I think.
Oh, a lot of hundreds?
Well, we celebrate your mother. She's 100 years old. And
that's true.
We've got hundreds. You got the 100-year anniversary coming up, so it's a good number.
Thank you, Mark. Oh, he's such a good person. Anyway, I met Mark a few weeks ago when Lynn Yackel, in her role as director of the Women's Institute at Drexel University, had a press conference featuring Senator Robert Casey. Casey's such a good guy. And he had introduced a resolution into the United States Senate, Senate Resolution 405, requesting that Philadelphia be the centerpiece for a national celebration of the 100th anniversary of the constitutional amendment for the women's right to vote.
That's right.
And that's where I met Mark Steinman.
Yes.
But that was his first exposure to Vision 2020.
Well, I was introduced to Vision 2020 last September.
By who?
From Lynn Yackel. I've known the Yackels for many, many years. And I think most people around here know who Lynn is.
Everybody knows who Lynn Yackel is.
That's right. And if you don't, go to vision2020.com. You'll find all you need to know. Their daughter, Courtney, was in my class at Radnor. I graduated in '85, and Paul, her younger brother, were great friends, and her husband, Paul.
You graduated from high school in '85?
I'm showing my years, but it's true.
I have cheese in my refrigerator older than you, Mark. Oh, my God.
It lasts a long time, doesn't it? So I've known the Yackels for a long time, and so Lynn came to me last September, and she sat down and shared with me what we're going to talk about today, and I took an interest for two reasons. One, because I hadn't heard of it, and two,
you were hiding under a rock. How could you not have heard of it?
I guess so. I'm the Geico guy from that commercial. I've been under a rock all these years, and the second part of it is my mother is from Iran, and when she came here, I've heard all the stories that she had. She was challenged at 16 to get a job and finish at Penn, and it was hard for her to, in a lot of ways, to really succeed in business. And she was successful in many ways in a few businesses that she ran, and so it resonated with me as Lynn was talking to me. I thought about, well, this makes sense. I mean, women. I'd willing to bet that most of the men around here, their women's probably run the checkbook at home. It's a big job, and they tend to do a better job. So I think that the equality that is deserved for women is important. So that's why I'm here to help support that.
Do you have a daughter?
I have a daughter who's 12.
So I'm sure she's excited that you're going to be involved with this also.
Absolutely.
Well, it's very interesting because this nifty brochure that Lynn and her national committee put out, the vision for equality that Mark just mentioned, their vision is for shared leadership, economic parity, that means equal pay for women. We recently had the Equal Pay Day. Civic engagement, engaging in civic issues, and youth education, that boys and girls value gender equality. We don't see a lot of that these days.
I think you're going to see more of it.
Well, if Lynn and her leadership campaign have anything to do with it, of course they will. You just let drop that your mother was from Iran. You're like the United Nations, your family. I mean,
I don't
I
know
was
about
told. I've only met Mark recently, but we were chatting before we turned on the television camera, and it's amazing his family background. Talk about that.
I was adopted. No, I'm kidding. Um, I have two older sisters, and many people, based on my last name, Steinman, they think it's Jewish, and it's not. It's German. However, my mother was Jewish and raised in Iran, and her grandfather, or my grandfather, her father, was the head of the village. This is in the 20s. So Iran was, for lack of a better term, like a hillbilly country. There wasn't a centralized government, and it was really just villages, and everyone did their own thing. She was in Claremont Shah, which is on the the eastern edge of Iran. So it'd be the equivalent of going from Philadelphia to Trenton. You go over the Tigris Rivers there, and there's Baghdad almost. So my grandfather did a lot of exporting. So at one point he converted to become Muslim because if he didn't, being a rabbi, they were going to kill all the people in the village, and it was his village.
Ooh,
So he said, the story goes.
not a nice neighborhood.
No, I don't know if it's. I've never been there. I've heard a lot of things. My mom had gone back 15 years ago. She still goes back, but it's certainly still. They got some room to make things right. So he ended up saying 3 words, and he was Muslim, and he saved the entire village from.
What was his name?
Well, Moishe was his name, Purian.
That's the Hebrew name.
Moishe Purian was his name, and my mother, they called her Genki. It was Mahin. And so that whole, and you just think about, let's fast forward to today. Still, if you're reading the news and following what's going on, women there are really at a disadvantage. So I feel that our country tends to lead the way for things that are right and that are just and that are truthful. And so hopefully, I don't know how long it takes. Here we are looking at 100 years in 2020, the centennial celebration of women's right to vote in this country. It's a big deal, right? So hopefully we can start here and really make an impact and move it over there and other parts of the world, but start here.
There are more different religions in different countries in your background. You didn't touch on all of them yet.
Well, my father's German. And
From Germany.
From Germany. So Steinman is German, and so I do have. They say, tell me if I'm right. They say if your mother was Jewish, you're Jewish. That's kind of what I've been told.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you'd say that. So with that being said, they met at Drexel. So my mother was at Penn, and my father was at the Drexel University on 34th Street, and ironically, I lived in the same fraternity house, Sigma Pi, that he founded in I think it was 1956, something like that, and it's on 34th Street. So they met in the basement, my mother and father, in the basement of that house, and
Was it a party?
It was a party, and the rest is history. So I have 2 older sisters.
But what religion do you practice now?
Well, I'm Presbyterian by background from my father, and my children and wife, they're Catholic. So,
And your sister?
my oldest sister is Jewish, and my middle sister, I'm not exactly sure, but I don't think it's any of the ones I mentioned. I don't know how many
The
are left.
Steinman family, they're covered. It doesn't matter what religion you name, there's somebody in his family that belongs to that group.
I think Lynn felt the diversity when I don't even think she knows this story. She was picking it up somehow.
Well, did you major in finance? Or?
Yes, I'm a 3rd-generation financial advisor.
I never heard anybody say that before so proudly.
Well, 8%.
3rd generation financial advisor. I love it.
Most businesses, 3rd generation, the likelihood of that occurring is about 8%. So it's my grandfather, my father's father, was the epitome of traditional stockbroker. Retired in 1973 after 50 years. Dropped out of high school in 1923 and lived through the tough stuff. And said to my dad, "Don't do this. It's crazy. Go be a bricklayer. They're building houses, and you'll be busy for a long time." And so, what's my father do? He goes out, and he was more on the institutional side and was the controller at First Pennsylvania Bank, and then at PSFS, which still has the sign up today as
Oh,
a
yes.
historical landmark, as the oldest bank in the country. And he ran the trust department there. And back then, the 401k didn't come around until the early 80s. So pensions, defined benefit pension plans that really aren't as seen as much today, was what he did. So when I came out of school, he said, I said, "I'm going to go into the brokerage business." And he said, "You're crazy." So yesterday I celebrated 15 years at Raymond James. I've been in business for 22 years now.
What did they give you to commemorate 15 years at the same firm? Because that's unusual in today's economy.
I think I'm getting something.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what it is yet. Maybe it's just to keep my job. I'm happy with that.
Maybe they'll give you a watch or something, or a clock,
Yeah.
a plaque,
Yeah.
something.
Sure.
You deserve it.
Thank you. Yes.
So, what happened to you when you said to Lynn Yackel, "Sure, I'll sign on for your campaign for equality for women"?
It was just a natural fit, I think.
Because there aren't a lot of men that were at that press conference. There were a few.
Well,
in
let me tell you
addition
one
to
that's
Senator
better.
Casey.
I went down to their congregation in Nashville in I think it was October, late October
What's
of
congregation?
last year.
What's
When they get together and all the women,
convention?
like a convention, yeah, and they talk about what they're working on. There's 100 delegates across the country. There's another 100, and there's about 100 allied institutions or folks that are involved, and that's growing. So when I went to Nashville, I saw firsthand how they work together, and I think most people would agree, if they're paying attention, that women are great stewards. They tend to be a little more conservative. At Raymond James, we have about 30% of our board are women, and I think that's part of this four-pronged approach with Vision 2020, is to have more women involved in the public and private sector.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Diane Samingson is an
Yes.
amazing woman.
She certainly is. I like her a lot.
And I'm not sure of her title. I think she's the president.
She was running that whole show down there at the Constitution
Yeah,
Center.
the press conference. But she has a special title. I'll find it in a second. She was just, I've known her for years.
Yeah, flip that.
She's
It's right
been
here.
here we go.
Yeah.
She is, here's Raymond James, is right out there
Right.
in the sponsor level. Okay. Lynn Yackel's the director of the Institute, founder and president of Vision 2020. But, and Leslie Ann Miller is up there, Rosemary Greco.
Yes.
There's another guy, Sidney Rosenblatt. I don't know him. Do you know him?
Sidney is an interesting individual. I met him once in our Ballackinwood office about, I want to say 17 years ago or something like that, or 15 years ago.
Oh, here's Diane Samingson.
Yeah.
She's the chair of the Vision 2020 Centennial Celebration. There are a lot of heavy-duty names here. David L. Cohen, Senior Executive Vice President of Comcast.
Oh.
It's always nice to have David on something.
Sure.
Absolutely. Janet Haas, Juliet Goodfriend from the Bryn Mawr movie theater, Meryl Levitz from Visit Philadelphia. Oh, look at this very, very impressive list of names. Yes. And here's Jamie McEwen, partner and chair of the firm Morgan Lewis and Bacchius. I think she's the first woman president of Morgan Lewis. There aren't too many women presidents of law firms or banking institutions. Well, the Betsy Cohen was a revolutionary. She really was, with Jefferson Bank. So what's your as a member of the Leadership Council?
I feel that my role in this can be many, many different things. One of the things that I'm doing, there's of course the monetary effort to help raise funds. There's connecting other successful women and into the group, and specifically at Raymond James, I have the benefit of knowing a lot of the highly successful female advisors at our firm, and I've started introducing some of them to the delegates around the country in Miami, Colorado, and so on, to have them get involved at the local level. And certainly having Lynn and her background, and as you went through the list of people that are the women involved, it's not just women. There's some men
Yeah.
involved, and I kind of think of it like, I have two thoughts of what you're saying. One is, it's almost like this, not having heard about it. It's almost like you're working on this company in a garage that no one's heard about. And all of a sudden, it's like the Microsoft comes out of the garage and everyone's going to know. And I think certainly before the 2020 commemoration in our centennial celebration, the effort is to try to get the word out so more and more people know about it. The other part of it was, you mentioned for women, and the president at Morgan Lewis is, on Wall Street, it's a lot of following. So analysts tend to follow one another, and if they all think the same thing about a company, they all think the same thing, and no one's really at risk. But there's always the guy that comes off and says, well, wait a minute, I'm going this way, and then another guy says, well, I'm going to go this way. And so I think as you see more and more women taking these posts, which they've earned and they deserve, that you'll see other companies fall in line. That's in the private sector. I'm going to leave the public that sector to the public sector to Lynn. I don't know how to do that one.
She came that close to being
Yeah.
elected United States Senator. She
Yeah.
carried the mantle.
Most
She
people
really
say
did.
that she didn't lose. It was that she almost won.
That's true.
And that's, I think,
That's true.
worthy of note, because there's a difference between the two.
Oh, absolutely. She did. She came that close.
Yeah.
It was amazing. She's a remarkable person. But with Bobby Casey, standing there, having introduced a resolution before the United States Senate, I mean, that's a biggie. And it was cute because Senator Casey said he's got a wife and 4 daughters, so he has a vested interest in making sure that the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote is a big success across the nation.
Sure.
It's not just for Philadelphia or
Right.
Lower Merion or Radnor or whatever. This is a national effort that Lynn has launched. I'm sure when she started it, she didn't realize it was going to grow by leaps and bounds,
Not knowing her in that regard and how she rolls in that capacity, I don't think she really thinks about that. I think she sees it and she's just, okay, I'm going to surround myself with good people, and we're going to do this thing. And so I feel honored and delighted to be a part of it, and I'm happy to help, and my role, I guess, will be kind of defined as it goes.
It's funny because it's a presidential campaign right now. Wouldn't it be interesting if there's a woman president in office when we come to 2020? Yes. But I'm not going to make any political statements. I've made them often enough.
Well, we've already covered religion, so I don't know what else we could talk about. It's gonna.
Oh, and it was interesting because the press conference was held at the National Constitution Center.
Right.
And Jeffrey Rosen, who is a terrific guy, is the CEO. He's also a law professor. He's the CEO of the National Constitution Center, but he goes back and forth between Washington and Philadelphia because he's also a law professor in Washington, D.C. I forget which law school he's at. I don't know whether it's George Washington, American, whatever. But he's a genius, and he's very close friends with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. He's had her speak at the Constitution Center. I think she was the judge who married him to his wife. She presided over the ceremony. I mean, he's tight with Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah.
But I asked a question, and he gave a terrific answer. I asked,
You had 2 questions, if I remember.
yes, I
right.
had a couple of questions. I always ask the first question because people are shy.
You know, that's what my dad always said. He would go to these meetings, and the great presentation, or not a great presentation, or whatever it was, they say, anyone have any questions? And no one. So he would always raise his hand first just to get, and it's like I said, falling in line. Once you get someone talking, other people start talking.
Well, my first question was, how come nobody mentioned the Equal Rights Amendment, which went down in flames when it tried some years ago? is that going to be on the agenda for the 2020, for the 100th anniversary? And Senator Casey had an interesting answer. He said that there were two bills in the hopper right now, one for equal pay, and I forget, I'll have to look at my column that I wrote about it for something else. But then Jeffrey got up, Jeffrey Rosen, and he gave like a mini lecture from his law school, and he said the level of discrimination against women, the gender discrimination, doesn't quite rise to the level of racial discrimination, which is
Yes.
recognized by the Supreme Court. And I thought that was very insightful of him to say that. I mean, it was also disappointing that it's okay to discriminate against women, you just can't discriminate against people because of race. But that day may be coming too. And maybe if Lynn's carrying the ball, I think that there's something in the future for the Equal Rights Amendment.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But you look around, every year there's a nonprofit in New York called Catalyst, Catalyst, and they issue a report on the number and percentage of women CEOs of Fortune 500 corporations and the percentage and number of women on corporate boards. It shrinks every year. You think it'd get better, that people are getting a wake-up call. It gets more depressing every year. It really does.
Yeah, it's
Who's the CEO of Raymond James?
our Tom James started the company.
Oh, there was
I mean, Bob James started the company,
there was somebody named James.
and then Tom James, who's a tremendous steward, has done a terrific job. Stepped down as the CEO. I think it was officially 2010, right? I guess the same year of Vision 2020. And Paul Riley came on, who had been on our board for many, many years. So we've had 3 CEOs in over 60 years.
That's it?
That's it.
That's
First non-family member.
That's a remarkable record.
It is.
Are there women on the board?
There are. I believe there's 3.
Out of how many?
I want to say there's 12, but I think there's 10.
Well, that's a pretty
there's
good
10.
percentage
I should know
then.
this. You're putting me on the spot. I should know these things.
That's a pretty good percentage.
Yeah, no, it is. It's 30 and 30%. And I think, and as I said it earlier, that seems to be a number that can grow. I mean, you're really close to getting to 50%, as long as you don't keep adding more board members, of course. So hopefully that's part of one of the areas that I have an interest in.
But it's very interesting. Pennsylvania has 18 members of Congress right now. 0 women are in our congressional contingent. Used to have 1, Allison Schwartz, but she stepped down to run for the Democratic nomination for governor, and she and a bunch of others lost to Tom Wolf, and she had already stepped down. She put all her eggs in one basket, which was the gubernatorial basket. So now we have 0 women. And if you look at Congress, there are third world countries that have more women in high places and in their parliaments and in their whatever, their government. They make America look sick. They really do.
Yeah.
My husband's from Tunisia, and before the revolution, I was there. I've been there many times. There was a larger percentage of women in their parliament than, especially Pennsylvania's from the dark ages. When you go to Harrisburg, oh my God!
I was just up there last Friday, actually.
Oh, did you have fun?
It was snowing.
Oh, you went up in that horrible
It was snowing.
snowstorm.
It was crazy.
Oh, snow and ice and freezing cold. The weather's so crazy. But I hope you're one of the ones that does believe in climate change.
Weather doesn't bother me. As long as I'm up and alive, that's all.
No, but do you believe that the climate
I
change
don't.
is happening?
I don't believe in that. You're asking me, and I'm telling you.
How could you not?
Well, okay. Well, let's talk about a fact that the world, Earth has frozen over before. I think more than once. If I'm not an expert in this field, but I know it's frozen over before, but it's never melted and heated up. So I'm a believer, and I think maybe based on the weather last Friday, we're more likely to freeze again before we're gonna overheat.
Oh, I hope not. Oh my goodness. Anyway, at the press conference, we learned from Diane Semingson that they're going to have major events across the country, especially in Philadelphia, and they're targeting, I think, like March, July.
Well, March was the kickoff at the Centennial Center, and then August. I think it's the 26th. It's a Friday, late August, National Women's Day, I believe it is.
That's to commemorate the Seneca Falls Convention.
And then hopefully a great turnout for our election in November.
And that's another thing that they all talked about, all the speakers at the press conference, that they want to make sure not just women, but that everybody gets registered to vote for
Sure.
the November election. And I keep telling people don't realize, I say Pennsylvania is not a civilized state. If you're not registered with a party, either Republican or Democrat, if you try to register independent, you're disenfranchised because then you can't vote in this primary in the spring. So I always urge people, I say, look, I'm a Democrat, but register Republican just so you can pick the candidates in the spring. Otherwise, you just show up in November. Often the decisions have already been made.
Right.
Other states, we've seen through this whole crazy election year process that you can, the day of, you can pick what party you want to be registered in and vote in that primary. I have some problems with that too, you know. But I always urge people to
Maybe
register.
you should run for
party.
office. Then maybe
I
it's your
ran
time.
once. I did. Oh, I did in '99. I ran for. I was asked by the Democratic Party to run for commissioner in Lower Merion Township, but they never revealed to me that they had never been able to field a Democratic candidate in 5-2 because it was so overwhelmingly Republican. Like the next block from my little semi-detached, historically certified house is the Annenberg estate. But Walter Annenberg was feuding with the Republicans in those days. Had something to do with taxes. Yes.
Yeah, I remember. It was a big deal.
So Walter, the ambassador called me one day, said, Bonnie, are you running against those rats? I said, well, if you mean if I'm running against Republicans, yes. He said, good, I'm sending you a check. And he sent me a check for $250. I got more mileage out of that check from Walter Annenberg. I lost by only 58 votes. My husband kept saying, oh my God, it's going so well. God forbid you win. It's a full-time, non-paying job. Your clients will kill you.
Right.
So I got the best of both worlds. They praised me to the skies, and then I found somebody 4 years later to run, and by that time, the demographics had changed in our district, and we've had a Democratic commissioner. Cheryl Gelber, who's an attorney, has been doing a wonderful job for years as the commissioner from Ward 5, which is North Ardmore. It's right behind Lower Merion High School. That's where our district is. So, do you vote every election?
I sure do.
Every primary?
I vote every time I can, and you should too.
I cannot believe people that show up every 4 years and they don't know why their name isn't in the binder. I said, you never voted, you know.
The first person I asked someone who's complained to me about something, I said, did you vote? And if they say yes, then I'll listen. But if they didn't, I said, stop talking.
Good for you. Well, our guest today has been Mark Steinman, who is on the Leadership Council of Vision 2020, Lynn Yackel's marvelous creation. And we put all the information up on the screen, facebook.com/Vision 2020 Equality Insight. There's a phone number, 215-991-8190. And I hope that everybody will get involved with the celebration. And equality is in sight, right, Mark Steinman?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks, Bonnie.